Cops threw a handcuffed black man from the helicopter, then learned a lesson they never imagined. The night sky screamed with rotors. Rain hammered the helicopter like bullets, lightning splitting the darkness into white shards. Cops threw a handcuffed man from a helicopter, the headlines would later read. But that wasn't the story. The real story started 1 second before the fall, when Captain Elias Carter looked his betrayers in the eyes and realized the truth. They didn't throw him out because he was guilty. They threw him out because he knew too much. Wind howled, metal screamed, and in that endless second before gravity claimed him, Elias whispered, "Tell your boss. The sky remembers everything." Then he fell. The storm over the Atlantic was a beast of black water and static. The UH-60 Blackhawk cut through it like a wounded animal, its cabin shaking under the pressure. Inside, Elias Carter sat chained at the wrists, ankles, and throat, a hero turned prisoner. Once the Air Force's youngest decorated pilot, the man who had led extraction missions in war zones no sane person would enter, now reduced to a classified asset disposal. 3 soldiers sat across from him, faces pale under the red cabin lights. They weren't enemies. They were his squad. The same men he had pulled from burning wrecks. The same men now refusing to meet his eyes. Only Major Briggs, his commanding officer, stared back. Calm, collected, unreadable. The Major's voice cut through the storm. "You should have kept your mouth shut, Carter." Elias didn't answer. He didn't have to. The truth was already bleeding through every report, every false signature. Weeks earlier, he'd discovered encrypted flight logs showing illegal drone parts being funneled through private contractors to foreign mercenaries. When he brought it up the chain, the response was simple. Delete the file. Instead, he copied it, and in doing so, signed his own death warrant. The helicopter lurched as turbulence hit. Outside, the sea was an abyss of white foam. Inside, the silence was worse than the thunder. Briggs leaned forward, unstrapping his harness. "You know what's funny, Carter? I actually liked you." Elias looked up, his face bruised but steady. "You don't throw people you like out of helicopters." A faint smirk touched Briggs's lips. "Sure you do, when they threaten national profit." He reached for the emergency latch. The side door burst open, letting the storm invade the cabin. The wind tore at their clothes, a violent scream swallowing every word. 2 soldiers grabbed Elias by the arms. He didn't resist, not yet, his eyes fixed on Briggs, and for a heartbeat, time slowed. "Whatever you're being paid," Elias shouted over the storm, "it won't buy you peace." Briggs just smiled. "Peace is overrated." Then he nodded. Elias was shoved into the blackness. Lightning flashed. For a moment the world froze mid-fall. Elias's body twisted through the air, the cuffs biting into his wrists. Wind shredded his uniform, his reflection flickering in every raindrop like a ghost. Below, the endless ocean. Above, the helicopter's fading lights. He'd done countless free-fall drills before, but never with broken ribs, bleeding hands, and steel around his wrists. He angled his body, fighting to breathe, forcing his shoulders forward to catch the wind. The cuffs cut deep, pain exploded, but he managed to change his descent just enough to avoid the jagged reef below. The impact came like an explosion, cold, crushing, endless. Water swallowed him whole. For a moment, there was nothing. No sound, no light, no thought, just the heavy silence of a man halfway between life and death. Then, through the darkness, a voice. "Altitude and hope, son. Never surrender either." His father's words, long dead but louder than the storm. Elias kicked upward. The surface felt miles away. His lungs screamed, his body convulsed. But he broke through the waves, gasping, coughing salt and blood into the rain. The helicopter was gone, but the fire inside him, that was still there. He wasn't dead. Not yet, and if fate had thrown him out of the sky, he'd climb back up with wings made of vengeance. He drifted toward a faint light on the horizon. A cargo ship or a ghost. Didn't matter. He would live. He would rise. And when he did, the men who threw him out would wish he hadn't. The tide dragged his body toward a deserted coastline, a graveyard of rusted metal and coral. When Elias opened his eyes again, morning light stabbed through the haze. His head throbbed, lungs burned, every muscle felt torn from the inside out. Salt crusted his lips. His uniform hung in rags. He had no weapon, no comms, no identification. Only the heavy truth pounding behind his eyes. They threw me out to erase me. He crawled through the sand until he found shelter beneath the ruins of an old fishing shack. Inside, nothing but broken nets and silence. He tore a piece of metal siding and used it to cut through his restraints. Every slice dug deeper, but he didn't stop, not until blood ran freely and the cuffs clattered to the floor. He stared at his trembling hands. Once they guided multi-million-dollar jets. Now they were just the hands of a ghost. Hours later, a small wooden boat appeared along the shore. An old fisherman with weathered eyes noticed movement among the rocks. He found Elias collapsed, fevered, half-conscious. The old man dragged him aboard, muttering in a foreign tongue. When Elias finally woke, it was in a dim hut with a fire crackling and rain whispering against the roof. He tried to sit up, but a wave of pain stopped him. "You're lucky, soldier," the fisherman said without looking up. "Storm like that doesn't leave many alive." Elias's voice was hoarse. "Where am I?" "Outskirts of the Azores. Middle of nowhere." "You fell from the sky, didn't you?" Elias hesitated, then nodded. The old man just smiled faintly. "Skymen always fall hard. But the ones who get up after they're dangerous." Elias didn't reply. But the words stuck like steel in his mind. For days, he drifted in and out of consciousness. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of his squad. The look of betrayal, the storm, Briggs's smirk. When he finally regained strength, he walked out to the shore and looked toward the horizon. His reflection in the water looked like a stranger's. Sunken eyes, a scar splitting his lip, bruises turning purple. But behind that broken image was something else. Purpose. He whispered, "You wanted me erased. Now I'm your ghost." That night, he scavenged through the fisherman's tools, found a working radio. Static, dead frequencies. But with patience, he caught fragments, coded military chatter, encrypted signals. The world thought Captain Elias Carter was dead. Good. That meant he could move freely. He packed food, a knife, and a compass. Before dawn, he thanked the fisherman. "Where will you go?" the old man asked. Elias answered without turning back. "Home, or what's left of it." Weeks later, in Lisbon, a man with no passport and a limp walked through the port crowd unnoticed. He traded his dog tags for fake papers, hitched a freighter to New York, and vanished into the underworld of the city that had once saluted him. He wasn't the same man. Gone was the officer's precision haircut, the crisp uniform, the obedient salute. In his place, a survivor in plain clothes, eyes that had seen too much sky and too much betrayal. He found shelter in an old aircraft hangar on the outskirts, one he had trained in years ago before the Air Force privatized the base. Dust coated everything, but the smell of oil and jet fuel felt like home. He rebuilt from nothing, forged new IDs, taught himself to hack military records. Piece by piece, he followed the money trail. The ghost signatures, offshore accounts, encrypted transfers, and there it was. Project Hawk Shadow, a black-budget operation run by contractors posing as defense allies. Head of operations, Major Nathan Briggs. Funding source, undisclosed. Objective: asset liquidation for security control. That was the line that froze him. He wasn't the only asset, there were others. Other pilots, other soldiers who had found out too much, and disappeared. He needed proof, and someone who could expose it. That's when he reached out to Lena Ortiz, a military journalist he once saved during an evacuation mission in Syria. She had gone underground after publishing stories about government black sites. Elias left her a coded message only she would understand. The sky remembers. 2 days later, she found him. Same fire in her eyes, same distrust in her tone. "You were supposed to be dead," she said. "I got better," Elias replied. He showed her the files, the ledgers, photos, encrypted transmissions. Lena scrolled through them silently. When she looked up, her face was pale. "You know what this means?" Elias nodded. "It means the people running this country's security aren't protecting it. They're selling it." She slammed the laptop shut. "Then we burned them to the ground." For weeks, they built their counter-operation. Lena gathered sources from within the Pentagon. Elias tracked private airfields and flight plans tied to Briggs's new company. Ether Dynamics, a defense supplier with too many secrets. Every piece of the puzzle pointed to one conclusion. Briggs wasn't just covering up the arms trade. He was running it. But going public would be suicide. They needed something undeniable, something that couldn't be spun or erased. So Elias decided to hit them where it hurt. He'd infiltrate one of Ether's facilities, pull the original data core, and broadcast the files live. Lena frowned. "You'll never make it out." Elias just smirked. "They already killed me once." The following days were a blur of preparation. Silent, precise, relentless. He rebuilt his strength through pain. Every push-up echoed a promise, every scar a reminder. He trained in the hangar until his hands bled. Practiced free-fall maneuvers using old parachute rigs. Hacked secure networks until dawn. He wasn't just training his body, he was rebuilding his identity. The world thought Captain Elias Carter was gone. Now he was something else, something they couldn't control or predict, a ghost in the sky, a storm they created. One evening, as thunder rolled in the distance, Elias stood outside the hangar watching the clouds close in. Lightning painted his face in white and blue. Lena joined him, holding a tablet loaded with their final mission coordinates. "Tomorrow night," she said. He nodded. She hesitated. "If you don't come back, I won't need to," he said quietly. "Because after tomorrow, they'll all know the truth." The storm thickened. Wind tore through the field. And for the first time since the fall, Elias smiled. The sky was calling again. But this time, it wouldn't take him. He would take it. Rain lashed against the rusted hangar. Inside, Elias Carter stood alone beneath the dull flicker of an overhead light. On a table lay his flight jacket, the same one they tore off him the night he was betrayed. He ran his hand over the patch. Wings don't fall. They rise again. He zipped it up slowly, eyes burning with purpose. No insignias, no medals. Just a man and a mission. Midnight. The private airfield outside Chicago glowed like a sleeping beast. Floodlights sweeping over warehouses and drones on standby. This was Ether Dynamics' central hub, the same company Briggs had built off blood and betrayal. Elias moved like a shadow across the perimeter fence, timing every camera sweep, every patrol pattern. His breath fogged in the cold air. The storm above rumbled, covering his steps. Through his earpiece, Lena's voice whispered from the van nearby. "You're clear for 40 seconds, then security loops reset." "Copy," Elias replied. His voice was steady, focused. He cut through a side panel, slipped inside the facility, and moved through corridors lined with steel crates labeled aerospace prototypes. Except these weren't prototypes. Inside were high-grade weapons, unregistered, ready for illegal deployment. Lena's voice cracked through static again. "You're heading toward the data vault. 2 guards ahead." Elias ducked behind a turbine engine. When one guard passed, he stepped out, disarmed him silently, then caught the second in a chokehold. No noise. No mercy. He dragged them out of sight and kept moving. He reached the glass-encased control room, red lights blinking inside like a heart. Beyond that, the central data vault containing the proof that would expose the entire network. Lena's voice again. "Security clearance required, level Omega, you can't brute force it." Elias smirked. "Who said anything about brute force?" He slid a small flash drive into the access port. The system glitched. Then his face appeared on every internal camera feed. Elias Carter. KIA classified. The AI paused, processing. Then, in a monotone voice, "Welcome back, Captain Carter." The door hissed open. Inside, thousands of encrypted files flickered across the screens. Names, locations, payments. Proof that Briggs's company had been selling classified U.S. weapons to global militias. Elias uploaded everything to Lena's broadcast drive. Download complete in 90 seconds, but alarms suddenly blared. Red lights flashed. Doors slammed shut. Lena's voice spiked. "They've got your signal! Briggs is on site!" Elias clenched his jaw. "Then it ends tonight." The elevator opened behind him with a hiss, footsteps, and then that voice. Cold, smug, unforgettable. "Captain Carter, I should have known the ocean wouldn't keep you." Briggs stepped into the light. Older, sharper, dressed in a tailored black uniform. Beside him, 2 guards with rifles. Elias didn't move. "Funny. You taught me to never leave loose ends. Guess that's your mistake." Briggs laughed softly. "You were a great pilot, Elias, but naive. You thought loyalty meant something. You thought this country still cared about its soldiers." He stepped closer. "It's not about loyalty anymore. It's about control. And people like you? You're just tools, disposable." Elias's eyes burned. "Then consider this tool broken." Before Briggs could react, Elias grabbed a nearby extinguisher, smashed it against one guard's face, and fired the second's rifle into the control panel. Sparks exploded. The vault plunged into chaos. Alarms screaming, sprinklers raining down. Briggs dove for cover. Elias advanced through the flashing red light, firing short bursts. Each step echoed through the chaos like vengeance itself. Briggs fled through the emergency exit, radioing security. Elias followed, weaving through catwalks and machinery. Gunfire cracked overhead. Lena's voice cut in again. "Elias, the data's broadcasting. The world's seeing it live. Get out now!" He didn't slow. "Not yet." Briggs sprinted into the hangar, where a prototype stealth jet waited on standby. He turned, face twisted with rage. You think this ends with me? You think the people funding me will let this stand? Elias loaded his last magazine. I don't care who's next. I just came for you. Briggs lunged for a gun on a crate. Elias fired. The bullet tore through his shoulder, sending him crashing against the jet wing. Elias walked up slowly, lightning flashing behind him through the open hangar doors. Briggs groaned, clutching his wound. You could have been rich. You could have been untouchable. Elias leveled the gun at him. I'd rather be free. Outside, the storm finally broke, rain pouring into the hangar as thunder shook the ground. Briggs laughed weakly. You won't make it out, Carter. The place is rigged to wipe itself clean. Elias looked around, blinking red lights under every console. Self-destruct. He turned on the comm. Lena, I've got the proof. It's over. Her voice trembled. Then get out. I'm already sending coordinates for extraction. But Elias just stared at the chaos. The flames, the sparks, the rain washing everything away. Not this time. He stepped back from Briggs, holstered his weapon, and walked toward the jet. With one deep breath, he pulled the main control lever, setting the engines to overheat. Briggs screamed, "What are you doing?" Elias looked back, finishing what you started. He jumped from the catwalk as the engines ignited. A wall of fire erupted, swallowing the hangar. The blast lit up the night sky. A second son born from betrayal. Morning. News headlines flashed across screens worldwide. Defense scandal exposed. Leaked files reveal billion-dollar black market. Hero pilot's final transmission surfaces online. In a quiet hospital room, Lena sat by a bed. The man inside was wrapped in bandages, eyes closed. But alive, she smiled faintly. You did it, Captain. His eyes fluttered open. Briggs? She shook her head. Gone. So is ether dynamics, he nodded weakly. Then after a pause, promise me something. What? If the world asks what happened that night, she leaned closer. Tell them a pilot came home, months later. Somewhere along the Pacific coast, a man in a hoodie stood near a small airfield. Engines roared overhead as jets crossed the sky. He smiled quietly, a scar still visible on his cheek. Lena's voice echoed in a distant radio broadcast. Today marks the one-year anniversary of the Carter Exposé, the operation that dismantled one of the largest defense conspiracies in U.S. history. The man turned toward the sunset. The reflection of a jet streaked across his eyes. He whispered, "Wings don't fall. They rise again."